First, we're going to pop out these two 8mm right here, which lead into this ducting system right here. However, we won't be able to remove this until we remove all of this right here. There's just not enough room with this intake in order to pull this out. Not a big deal. With this plenum and this intake system, you actually keep these off. So this piece will be removed and this piece will be removed, and they will not be reinstalled. Same with the airbox, same with the lid, same with the plenum. Basically, all of this is going to be removed. We are going to be removing this sensor right here. And then we have 3 hoses as well. One is underneath here, one is right here, and one is in the back. In addition to that, each individual throttle body is gonna have its own hose clamp with a 6mm nut on it. We're gonna have to loosen all of those on each side. Loosen all those up and we should be able to pull everything out. So let's go ahead and just pull off these 2 little 8mm, and then I think we'll start knocking out the airbox side of things and just work our way inwards towards the plenum. All right, so I actually have a couple of Torx over on this side that hold in the airbox. These don't belong on this car. I don't know who put these on, the previous owner, whatever. They're usually 10mm bolts. There's just 2 of them. Some people like to take the entire airbox off. I think it just depends on what your intake setup is. With mine, I have enough flexibility that if I just remove these 2 on the side, there's a grommet underneath the airbox, and then the couple of clamps that hold in the intake to the plenum, I can pull the whole thing out at once. But yours might be a little bit different just depending on how it's set up. On my car, these are 8mm right here. And loosen that up, loosen that up. And then back here, there is a little hose that we need to disconnect. A circular clip, you press down on the top and bottom and pull out. Should be really easy to pull that out. And so now I actually should be able to pull this entire thing out. But like I said before, yours might be a little bit different just depending on how it's actually set up. So really, if you just pull up, pop this elbow out, get that out of the way. Let's see, what are we going on? Pull the whole thing out at once. I'm gonna wrestle it out like that. So again, yours might not come out that easily. You might have to take the top off of that thing and just work it out, but mine is pretty flexible. Also, my factory plenum is pretty beat up, scratched up. Just seems like it's had better days. Go ahead and pull this coupler off. We won't be reusing that. So for this plug right here, you're just gonna press down on the metal, pull down, comes right out like that. There is going to be a plug on the bottom side that you need to pull out this way. And then there's also one on the back side that's gonna pull out directly down. However, I find that it's easier to take the plenum off or just pop it up off of the ITBs and then start unplugging those because you have a lot more room. So now we'll start hitting the ITB clamps. So basically when it comes to these ITB clamps, you can see them right there. 1, 2, 3 is just barely accessible back there. And then the last one, sort of have to sneak all the way through here, and it's nestled back there. So you'll be able to see it if you get in there with a flashlight, but we're gonna loosen all those up. And when I loosen those up, I like to loosen them up pretty much all the way. Don't take them off, but it will help you when you are removing it. There are the other ones hidden under there, going all the way across. So this side is a little bit tighter on the back, but I have a tool that greatly helps getting this thing off, and it just makes it a million times easier. It's a little flex socket extension. So the first one's gonna be really easy to get on this side. This is the little flex socket extension, and it has a 6mm. These are all 6mm nuts on these clamps. So just pop in here and just finesse our way onto it. The second one, the third one, which is probably one of the tightest ones to get to. And then the last one, which is back here. So that side's good. This side is a lot easier, in my opinion. Just easier to access everything. There was one more. All right, so once we have loosened all of those, we can go ahead and lift this guy off. We will be able to pull this out without removing the top plastic portions and then of course the strut bars. But in my opinion, when installing the new one, it is a better idea to just go ahead and take these off. You're gonna have a much better direct access into the throttle bodies and you don't risk any damage while installing or anything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and just pop this up. And then one plug under here. It's just got a circular clip on it, and then you will pull towards the valve cover, so towards the driver's side. There we go. And then in the back on this side, you will have one more hose that you need to remove. Mostly that just comes off for me without having to do really anything. I think the clip is broken on mine, so it just makes it a lot easier to pull out. And we can pull this right out. If you've never seen the ITBs on an S65, here you go. Pretty awesome. So before installing the carbon one, I do like to loosen these up until there's a good amount of play in them, just to make sure that the rubber flexes as much as I want it to when installing the new one. That is the hose in the back that you are removing when you lift up. And then this is the one that's on the bottom side. However, you can see that my clip is busted. So I actually have to replace a few clips on this car. When I bought the car and I first took the plenum off, this was not even connected, nor was the one in the rear. So there are actually 10 guide points when putting in the new plenum. 8 are gonna be your individual throttle bodies, and then these 2 over here on each side. So you wanna be careful when you're putting the new one in, make sure that everything lines up properly before actually pushing down and applying force. You need to make sure that when you guys install the new plenum that everything seats properly. These should be completely flush with the trumpets on the plenum. So before you start tightening these down and thinking it's on there, just take a look, try to get under there with a flashlight and make sure that it's all seated properly. Let's go ahead and remove the top little cowl pieces, and then of course the strut bars. We'll have a lot more access to just go flat down with our new plenum. I am super excited to get this plenum installed. I think it looks amazing. Drastically changes the way that the engine bay looks in these cars. And, you know, it's gonna help a little bit with performance, maybe not a ton, but it most certainly is a lot lighter. And I think with the volume and the breathability, it's just gonna be a better flowing intake system overall. Every S65 that I hear with these plenums just sounds absolutely insane. And you know, it's when it comes to these cars, they're not really about speed. They're all about sound and the feelings, the nostalgia that it gives you. And this is just part of that package. This is part of the package that makes it feel so fun and exciting to drive. I think that's why people love these cars so much. The induction noise compiled with the exhaust, it's a hard one to beat, for sure. All right. All right, so there you go, that easy. Only takes 60 seconds to remove all that stuff. It's pretty simple. Do you have to do it? No, but is it smart to? I think so. All right, so on the factory plenum, we are gonna be transferring one thing over, and that is this little intake temp plug sensor, I should say. And the way that you wanna do this is it actually spins, and then you pull out. The whole thing should just release itself like that. We are now officially done with that plenum. We can start working on the new one. Believe me when I say that looks can be deceiving, and even though that this is plastic, it is heavy. I mean, it's gotta be at least 10, 12 pounds. Sort of unsuspecting for something that is just a plastic plenum piece, but it's definitely got some weight to it. Our new one is much lighter. So we'll go ahead and take the sensor and insert it into this hole right here. All right, it's a pretty tight fit. I think if I remember correctly, it's positioned something like that, but we can move that while it's on the car and get it in the position that we want. All right, it is time for the main attraction. I'm gonna be throwing this guy, this plenum, in here, and it's gonna look freaking insane. I'm so excited. So we want to line everything up. Obviously, you wanna line all of these trumpets up with the individual throttle bodies, and then make sure that these two, this right here, and then this down here, also line up with those holes. And the reason I remove those strut bars is so you can just get direct access to everything, and you can clearly see that it is positioned properly and you are inside of each ITB and there's nothing in your way. When you have it set down on the car like this, before you actually go ahead and insert it, just take this plug and put it in. It's gonna be a lot easier to do that now than later. I did also send a little bit of compressed air through this piece just to make sure that there wasn't any loose debris inside and wouldn't get sucked into our engine. So good rule of thumb, anytime you're working on anything as far as like intake stuff, make sure that you clean them out. You've got this plug in the back as well, so we just want to make sure that that lines up before we snuggle this thing down. So I have all of the ITB clamps extremely loose right now, so I can just make sure that when I send this through that it doesn't have any issues. I'm pretty confident with the positioning. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and start pressing it on. Shouldn't take too much pressure. Saw the front go in there. There's that side. So the tolerance is tight on this one. It's extremely tight. I should say, and which is a good thing. You know, you want to make sure you have really tight suction, but the fitment, I mean, you have to have it lined up perfectly or you're just going to run into issues. So you can kind of stick your finger under there and just make sure that the little ITB silicone pieces aren't folding or crumpling up or doing anything weird. You just want to make sure that you have a nice tight seal all the way around. This looks good to me. When I move it, it moves the entire engine, so I'm happy with this. This does have hardware on the top of it. This design is a little bit different than some of the other ones. You can actually take this hardware out and remove the entire top, and you can see all of the velocity stacks and everything. It looks pretty cool. I'll throw some pictures up right here so you guys can see it. That, as far as like putting it in, that's it. You know, we've got this plug right here. Plugs right back in. Remember, you could twist that a little bit to make it fit a bit better. Put that guy back in. Make sure those two hoses are in. It looks like they're good on mine. I have to replace the clip on this one back here. It doesn't seem like it is doing much. This thing looks so cool in this engine bay. This design isn't gonna be for everyone. This is a little bit more on the aftermarket side. It's a bold statement of a Plenum, but I think it looks really good. And I really like the design of it. Being that it has more volume, it's actually gonna give you more sound and it's gonna give you more performance in general. And you'll see when we put the intake in, the intake is a lot larger too, so that's gonna contribute as well to the overall sound and performance. But it looks freaking sick, man. What a great way to just improve the engine bay. God, look at the presentation on that thing. All right, so now that we're happy with all of this, feels good all the way around, I'm gonna go ahead and get that 6mm, and we're gonna start tightening down each individual throttle body hose clamp. Don't have to go crazy on these. I just like to get them, you know, snug. The tolerance of this thing is so tight anyways that it's not coming off. So just make sure when you're tightening these down that the silicone isn't like folding out weird. If it just continues to tighten and it's not really going anywhere, it's probably a sign that something isn't seated properly. So I highly recommend picking up one of these little flex socket extensions. It's one of those tools where you don't realize that you need it, but it makes a huge difference on a lot of projects. You can just get into so many weird little angles. And you know how BMW is. They love to put their little bolts and nuts in weird places. Whoa, pause. So yeah, this one's, you know, this one has the branding in front. It's not, everyone just has their own preference when it comes to this stuff. And some people are gonna say, oh, I don't like it, I like the OEM one. If that's the one, you know, you should just buy the one that you like. I mean, whichever one you like, just go buy that one. You know, there's a lot of options out there, but personally, I think this one's sick. She's on there. Nice and tight. This thing is crazy. Checking all the connections, making sure we're good all the way around. Looking good to me. Everything's nice and tight, seated. Dude, it looks so crazy in here. It's so sick. I cannot wait to hear this thing. Such a cool design to it. Carbon fiber looks beautiful too. Subtle branding up front, nothing too crazy. The sheer volume of this Plenum versus the factory one, I mean, it's a lot bigger. It's a lot taller, a lot wider. This mouth is a lot bigger over here, which is why you have to delete this portion because it's just huge. Like it's just taking in so much more air. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put back on the strut braces and the little cowl pieces, but I won't bore you guys with that. So now we're gonna work on the airbox portion, and then lastly, we'll throw in the intake portion. If you look over here, this is where obviously the factory airbox was. There was a little grommet down here, a little rubber grommet. I ended up pulling that out. Looks like this. We're not gonna be using that again, so we can discard that. Here is all of the new hardware that we're supplied. We're gonna take this little green grommet, and we're gonna throw it right over here in the corner, just like that. This little guy right here is gonna go down here into this screw. You're simply just gonna screw it in. And I believe it's a 6mm Allen. Tighten this down. So on the new airbox design, this is a little bit different than some of the other ones. You're gonna see that this is kind of an open style design, but it still has our little scoop, our little air scoop right here that actually connects to the hood. And then on the inside of the car over here is air that comes up from the lower bumper air dam. So you're getting two areas where fresh air is coming into this intake system. And this rubberized gasket along the top actually creates a seal with the hood when you shut it. So you're not actually getting hot air from the engine into this piece. It's sectioned off from the inside of the engine by using this seal against the hood, which is a pretty interesting design. There's also a little black grommet you're gonna have to throw in. Basically just twist it into the carbon fiber. Be very careful, this is thin carbon fiber. You also have this piece right here. You're gonna go ahead and just twist that on. It's an 11 millimeter, I believe it's 11 millimeter. And just tighten that down. And we can actually go ahead and just throw this into the car. It's going to go in just like this. And it's a snug fit, but that is a good thing. I want that. Move that hose out of the way. I'll line that grommet up first. Bottom grommet, green grommet, both of them in perfectly. It looks just like that. As far as hardware is concerned, we're gonna have an Allen screw and a washer that is actually just gonna go right into here and screw directly into the factory location. This is a 4 millimeter Allen. And it screws directly in. Perfect. So this is in there, nice and good. You will see that a little bracket like this is also included in the kit. That is only for the factory radiators. I have an aftermarket radiator. If you have a factory radiator, it's gonna screw right into that, but we do not need to worry about that with my setup. All right, so we have a brand new coupler here from Turner Motorsport, silicone coupler, as well as these nice metal clamps. And so this is all gonna line up with the carbon. It's pretty nice too, because this carbon has like a little ledge to it. So when you put the coupler on, it just looks very flush with the carbon. It doesn't like sit on top of it. I like it. It looks very, very clean when you get it all installed. So I like to position these heads, the heads of the clamps, the screws on the far side, but of course, you know, you can do it however you want. I'm just gonna leave those loose for now so we can go ahead and put in the actual pipe portion. It's also beautiful carbon fiber. This thing is just gonna be blinging. You have these little pass-through pieces that are gonna go right here. So I've found the best way to do this is rather than going in like that and like that, you can actually just go into this portion down here, and then you have plenty of room on this side to get your coupler to fit on, just like that. Go ahead and put this hose on right here. Secure that. Before I tighten the clamps over here down, I'm gonna go ahead and put in our little washers and screws right here. These are again 4 millimeter Allen screws. So the portion on the air box is actually threaded, so you can just send them straight through and tighten it down, makes it easy. So they've kept the hardware same size as the ITBs. Hardware size, I should say, it's 6 millimeter for these little clips over here. So we'll start with the one on the plenum, and I just like to hold it into place while I tighten it so it's even all the way around. You are tightening into carbon fiber, so no need to go crazy. This thing shouldn't be popping off on you. Just snug it in. Bam, looks amazing. This whole piece looks really, really good. And officially the last piece, our cone filter here, some hardware right there. Just gonna pop this on the end. Should have plenty of room to just slide it directly in there. So this one is an 8 mil, I believe, because it's a larger clamp they used, larger hardware. Go ahead and tighten this down. Again, going into carbon fiber, don't need to go crazy, just snug. Cool. That looks good.